Chapter 2582. The young lady's lips curled into a faint smile. Facing the oncoming profound energy, the numerous blades formed from profound energy didn't seem to be bothered at all. A pair of charming eyes met Yuan Zhan's eyes with a faint smile. Just as Yuan Zhan's attack was about to land, the young lady's sweet laughter rang out once again, as melodious as a silver bell. "Don't worry, I will send both of you to hell together." Her clear laughter was like a clear spring, extremely pleasing to the ears. But in Yuan Zhan's ears, it was like a curse that hastened his death. Yiqing Luo didn't give Yuan Zhan any chance to retreat. Her right hand lifted up gently. A red feather fan that was like a raging flame appeared on her slender fair fingertips. Devour, glower flame fan. Lan Ling Noa's last trace of luck completely dissipated the moment the glower flame fan appeared. Her footsteps, which were closing in on Yiqing Luo, silently halted. Her body flashed and actually escaped from Yiqing Luo's attack range. Yuan Zhan was left alone there. Dmo Xian's woman owned the glower flame fan. Had a close relationship with the Heavenly Academy's students. Yi Luo. Yi Qing Luo. Other than that, there was no one else. This ordinary-looking slut was Yiqing Luo. Princess Donglan, trying to escape. A ghostly voice followed her ears like a shadow. Lan Ling Noa's heart was filled with shock and astonishment. At this moment, the moment the voice rang, it turned into endless fear. A red figure like a raging flame flew past. Following closely, a strong force blocked Lan Ling Noa's path. He forcefully pulled her back a few steps. "Why is Princess Donglan running? Aren't you secretly misleading her happily? Let's continue now." Yiqing Luo's fingers shook, the feather fan opened and instantly closed, drawing out numerous sharp wind blades. Swish swish swish, a few tearing sounds were heard. Lan Ling Noa only felt a chill. Numerous pieces of white muslin floated out from under that loose brocade robe. She screamed and immediately wrapped the brocade robe tightly. She could clearly feel herself under the brocade robe. Not a single strand of hair. The surrounding guests also saw the feather-like white gauze fluttering down. Strand by strand, they scattered on the ground. All of them had lustful gazes as they looked greedily in Lan Ling Noa's direction. Although Yi Nianxiu's loose robe covered her petite figure, she was still able to see him. But everyone knew, at this moment, apart from the embroidered robe on Lan Ling Noa's body, there was nothing else on her body. There was nothing else. Just imagining it made countless men smile sinisterly. Ah! Lan Ling Noa was so embarrassed that her ears turned red. She screamed and hugged herself. Yuan Zhan could only feel his blood freezing in his body. He breathed with difficulty bit by bit. Earlier Yiqing Luo's gaze made him feel as though he was in an icehouse. His mind, consciousness, and rationality froze in an instant. It was a fan that looked like a flame. A few exhibition rooms. Then, a cluster of flames, like an excited fire elf, cut through his chest and penetrated his flesh and bones. Pain, the excruciating pain made him unable to stand straight. His huge body staggered as he half knelt on the ground. Like a huge mountain, collapsing with a loud bang. Following that, he heard Lan Ling Noa scream. He raised his eyes and saw Lan Ling Noa frantically wrapping herself with her clothes, sitting on the ground in a sorry state. Chapter 2583. Yuan Zhan's pupils dilated bit by bit. Following that, he slowly shifted his focus to that young lady with a light smile. He knew that Yi Luo was very powerful. But he had not expected Yi Luo to be so powerful to this extent. He totally didn't see her strike clearly. He and Lan Ling Noa had no leeway to retaliate. No wonder the Overlord was so concerned about Yi Luo. But after he made his move, she couldn't even be bothered to look at him. Heh! He should have thought of it. A woman who could stand on the Overlord. How could she be so easily suppressed by others? This scene also caused the surrounding guests to be in disbelief. They couldn't believe it at all. The seemingly harmless young lady was able to make the generals who had been on the battlefield for many years, as well as the East Lawn princess, admit defeat with a snap of her fingers. Miao Yixiong and Miao Rongrong, who were far away in the crowd, exchanged glances with each other with a pale face. They were secretly rejoicing. Earlier, in order to get the antidote from Yiqing Luo, they resolutely chose to speak up for Yiqing Luo. Otherwise, the outcome of the North Lawn royal family, it would be the outcome of their Gu poison family. Now, who dared to say that Yiqing Luo was another country's spy? Who dared to say that Yiqing Luo was plotting against the top forces in the North Lawn continent, trying to break down the various forces in the North Lawn continent? This was all bullshit. The way the crowd looked at Yiqing Luo no longer had any other emotions. They were all fawning over him and filled with respect. Dmo Xian took a look at the fainted Xia Ji, as though he was throwing rubbish, as he casually threw him out. After that, he wiped his hands fiercely and walked towards Yiqing Luo without turning his head back. The overlord, who was filled with a baleful aura earlier, was like the king of Hades from hell. The moment his gaze met Yiqing Luo, Zhang Xian's cold expression softened in an instant. All the coldness gradually melted. His lips curled upwards, the tenderness between his brows kept blossoming. Done playing? He had a unique magnetic voice as he asked in a low voice. Yiqing Luo's arms opened wide, hugging Dmo Xian's neck, throwing her petite body completely into his arms. Then, she raised her little face in front of his chest. The girl hooked her arms around his neck and narrowed her eyes. She stared at his face with a smile and said, "I've played enough." Dmo Xian's arm exerted a little more strength. The young girl was already in his arms. With steady steps, he slowly walked towards the first row of seats. Yiqing Luo giggled as she circled her arms around his neck, shaking her legs in his arms like a mischievous child. The joy and sweetness between her brows were obvious. In the crook of the man's arm, the girl's delicate body was steadily supported. She did not feel the slightest danger. All the way until he reached Gue Wu's side. Gue Wu took the initiative to stand up, before moving a seat away from Zhou Mo. He gave up the seat beside Yiqing Luo to Dmo Xian. Then, Dmo Xian directly carried Yiqing Luo and sat down. His hands moved to her slender waist and refused to let go. Yiqing Luo calmly nestled in Dmo Xian's arms. The gazes of the people around her were not important to her. Perhaps, in the eyes of other women, reputation was more important. But, she had already set her sights on Dmo Xian. Even though they hadn't gotten married yet. But getting married was merely a matter of time. Love and whatnot should be openly shown out. Chapter 2584. Yin Xinghao and Wu Yu stood by the table, filled with shock and astonishment. It was until Yiqing Luo called out to him that Yin Xinghao shifted his gaze away from the overlord in a daze. Carry him down. He was stunned as he suddenly understood the meaning of Yiqing Luo's words. Right. Carry him down. His eyes stared intently at Yiqing Luo, unable to suppress the agitation in his heart. From his own son's mouth, he knew that this young lady's identity was not simple. Adding on to the fact that her relationship with Gue Wu was not bad. He had always treated her with courtesy. He had not expected. She was actually the overlord's woman. Because of her, Gue Wu had personally attended his birthday banquet. Because of her, the overlord was here. His Qinhua clan. This birthday banquet, wouldn't it be famous throughout the entire Nirvana realm? A row of Qinhua clan's guards carried the bunch of royal family's people who were lying on the ground down. The spurting blood on the ground was also cleaned up. The entire main hall was still in dead silence. No one dared to speak first to break the silence. Yiqing Luo looked at Yin Xinghao's hesitant and uneasy look. She couldn't help but cursed silently in her heart, just how respectable was this Dmo Xian's status in the Nirvana realm? Even the sect master Yin Qinghao was so anxious and agitated. She couldn't help but laughed as she eased the atmosphere. Sect master Yin and everyone, please don't mind, just treat him as if he doesn't exist. This man's temper is very good, no need to be anxious. As she was saying that, she propped herself up. Stretching out both her hands, she pinched Dmo Xian's face fiercely. This action nearly caused the surrounding guests to fall from their seats. Their eyes widened as they looked anxiously at Dmo Xian. That face which was being pinched by the little woman's hands. They thought that the overlord would fly into a rage and throw the person in his arms out. After all, to pinch a man's face in front of so many people. This was not only improper. It was trampling on the overlord's dignity. However, they only saw the doting and gentle look in Dizun's eyes. He did not stop the girl in his arms from touching his face. See, I've already said that his temper is very good. Just carry on with the birthday banquet, don't mind it too much. Yi Qing Luo tugged his lips, making him reveal a smile. Everyone, his forehead was covered in cold sweat. His mouth was full of dog food. Okay, they already knew. In Dizun's heart, the lady named Yi Luo was a special existence. The overlord doted on her to the core. Of course, the overlord would be nice to her. But, they weren't her. Continue to celebrate Sect Master Yin's birthday as if Dizun doesn't exist? They really couldn't do it. Just the thought of sitting in the same place as Dizun and breathing the same air was enough to make one's heart tremble. Their legs went soft, and they were so nervous that they couldn't even speak. Cough, cough, cough. Yin Qinghao looked at the crowds astonished, shocked, envious and various expressions. He cleared his throat and withstood the pressure. Since Miss Yi has already said so, then let's carry on as usual. If during this period, the overlord has anything that you don't like, just let me know and I will definitely do my best. After he finished his words, he looked at Dmo Xian anxiously. Dmo Xian lowered his head as he gazed at the person in his arms, not saying a word. Displaying his nobility and aloofness to the extreme. Yi Qing Luo rolled her eyes as she tugged at his robes. Chapter 2585. Wife, slave. In everyone's mind, these two words appeared at the same time. Immediately, they all looked towards the overlord. That look of pampering. That look of unconditional promise to any of Yi Qing Luo's conditions. The overlord was definitely a wife's slave. Since the overlord had already spoken. Yin Qinghao then carefully let the birthday banquet continue. But everyone was still unable to be as comfortable as before. Yi Qing Luo didn't care whether those people were comfortable or not. Her heart was filled with the joy of Dmo Xian returning to her side. Moreover, he had appeared in front of her like a god, protecting her and protecting her. Her young lady's heart was swelling. She sat up and clung to his chest. She raised her head and smiled. Ah, Xian, you're giving me so much face. Dmo Xian lowered his head, his dark eyes were like a lake, gazing deeply at her smiling face. So, where's the reward? Yi Qing Luo's long and narrow eyes curved deeper. She hooked Dmo Xian's neck with one hand. She generously offered her pink lips to him. Dmo Xian's eyes dimmed as his arms suddenly increased the strength. Yi Qing Luo's petite body, almost without any gap, clung tightly to the man's burning hot body. The scorching heat, through the clothes, seemed to be burning her skin. Yi Qing Luo could even feel it clearly. The man's change. Her cheeks were slightly stained with a shade of red, her little hand grabbed his collar, trying to push him away. But Dmo Xian kissed her even deeper. At the other end of the seat, a handsome gentleman dressed in a bamboo-colored brocade robe, crushed the wine glass in his hand. A pair of deep and gentle eyes seemed to be covered with a thin layer of mist. Young matriarch. Great Elder Gu heard the sound of the wine glass shattering, and jumped in shock. Gu Jingyu's gaze looked straight ahead, deeply hugging and kissing, as if there were only the two of them in the world. His pupils contracted bit by bit. Great Elder Gu called out a few times, but didn't get any response from Gu Jingyu. Looking at Gu Jingyu's palm, it was covered with blood after the porcelain was pierced. He immediately grabbed Gu Jingyu's hand, young matriarch. Gu Jingyu's eyes were still a little dazed. He glanced at Grand Elder Gu in a daze, then chuckled and shifted his gaze back to the girl who was smiling like a flower not far away. His heart felt as if it had been ruthlessly stabbed by something. It was so painful that he couldn't even feel the stinging pain of his palm being pierced by porcelain. So, her fiancé was Di Zun. The overlord who was regarded as a myth and a legend by everyone. If it was someone else, he might even be able to openly declare war on her fiancé. He had snatched Yi Luo away in broad daylight. But, that fiancé, that man, was the overlord. He had no chance of winning. They didn't even have the qualifications to fight for it. Just as he was feeling sentimental, Gu Jingyu suddenly felt a gust of cold wind pour into his body through his collar. He shuddered. An indescribable chill invaded his entire being. Gu Jingyu wanted to search for the source of the cold air. That chill, however, was cut off. All right, stop fooling around. Yiqing Luo buried her head in Dmo Xian's arms. Although she didn't care about other people's gazes. But no matter what, she was still a girl. In front of so many people, kissing, hugging and raising up high, she could accept it. But the kiss was inseparable, and she was about to lose control from his teasing. Chapter 2586. Dmo Xian chuckled. His chest rose and fell, shaking her face. The next moment, the man's slender fingers gently caressed her cheek. 5 fingers, slightly closed. She lifted her blushing face slightly. 4 eyes met. Under the deep gaze of those shimmering peach blossom eyes, Yiqing Luo suddenly felt her face heating up. Damn it. Was it because she hadn't seen a Xian for a long time? It was just a casual glance. It was enough to flirt with her so much. Yiqing Luo expressed that as the queen, she must not be afraid at this moment. She raised her hands and was about to hug Dmo Xian's neck to launch a counterattack. Her hands were held firmly in Dmo Xian's palms. Yiqing Luo couldn't struggle and simply fell into his arms, lifting her eyelids to glare at him. He was slightly startled by what he saw. Dmo Xian's eyes were filled with complex emotions that she couldn't understand. His brows were filled with a smile, but it wasn't a deep smile. Ah, Xian, why? She hadn't finished her question. But her lips were gently pressed by the man's slender fingers. When I wasn't around, how many rotten peach blossoms did you attract? His eyes flickered, his dark red thin lips raised into an extremely shallow arc. But Yiqing Luo could clearly feel the jealousy under Dmo Xian's smile. Her man could really knock over the vinegar jar anytime and anywhere. If you can't explain clearly, I'll deal with you ruthlessly. Dmo Xian got close to her face, the arc on his lips added a hint of evil. Yiqing Luo. Was he looking for an excuse to do something improper to her? But looking at Dmo Xian's serious expression, Yiqing Luo still explained obediently. Yin Yanxiu only saw Gue Wu's invitation, and Gue Wu and I were in the same carriage, so. When he picked Gue Wu up, he also picked me up. Dmo Xian raised his brows. That's it? What else can there be? Yiqing Luo pursed her lips, looking at Dmo Xian's disbelieving expression, she frowned slightly. That's it? Dmo Xian inched closer, until her pupils were filled with his handsome and elegant face, before he finally stopped. Yiqing Luo's eyes were filled with the man's incomparably handsome face. That pair of obsidian-like peach blossom eyes gleamed, causing her heart to beat wildly. You. What else do you want? Yiqing Luo's cheeks turned slightly red from his stare. She wanted to shift her body away, but Dmo Xian's grip tightened. He narrowed his peach blossom eyes, and the flowing light in his eyes stirred in a dark and mysterious way. His scorching gaze made Yi Qing Luo's heart beat wildly uncontrollably. It was clear that if she didn't explain herself clearly, she wouldn't be able to leave. She gritted her teeth and glared at him bashfully. With such an outstanding man like you by my side, good-looking, powerful, and giving me a sense of security, being able to ascend to the heavens and dive into the earth, capable of doing anything, do you think I'd be interested in any other lousy suitors? A flurry of praises successfully pleased Dmo Xian. It also greatly satisfied a certain man's self-esteem. The dark clouds on the face with the strange smile finally dispersed, revealing a satisfied smile. He let go of her face, put his arms around her waist, and leaned back slightly. His gaze seemed to be looking towards a certain direction. His eyes were filled with complacency and provocation. Yi Qing Luo was puzzled, and was about to follow Dmo Xian's gaze. But the man suddenly straightened his body. Her face bumped against his chest. The man's low and hoarse voice rang beside her ears, I want to eat something. Chapter 2587. Feed me. The man raised an arm and propped it on the table as he looked at her lazily. Yi Qing Luo blushed, eat it yourself if you want. Shouldn't he be the one feeding her? Dmo Xian's fingers on her waist moved unintentionally as he said lazily, it's especially delicious if you feed me. Clearly, it was just a flat tone, saying this sentence. But when Yi Qing Luo heard it, it somehow felt a sense of teasing. She didn't know if she was thinking too much. The word eat from Dmo Xian's mouth somehow felt that. He wasn't talking about eating things. Especially when the man's fingers caressed her waist. Yi Qing Luo expressed her surrender as she reached out for the exquisite pastries on the table and grabbed a piece, stuffing it into Dmo Xian's mouth. Stuffing action was absolutely not gentle. On the contrary, it was extremely rude. While stuffing, she stared at him with a pair of charming eyes. As if she was saying angrily, eat you to death. That look was extremely adorable. Dmo Xian smiled as he allowed Yi Qing Luo to stuff that piece of pastry into his mouth. The fragrant and sweet smell of the pastry seeped into his nose. It was also mixed with a young lady's fragrance. Looking at Yi Qing Luo's adorable expression, Dmo Xian's eyes suddenly flashed. Just as Yi Qing Luo was about to retract her hand, he suddenly opened his mouth and gently bit the young lady's delicate fingers. The two of them were very close. Dmo Xian could clearly feel the petite body of the person in his arms trembling slightly. A teasing smile flashed past his eyes as the tip of his tongue stuck out and swept over her fingers. Ah! Yi Qing Luo's cheeks suddenly turned crimson red as she immediately withdrew her hand and stared at him. Ah Xian. Can you be a little more serious? If I'm not serious, the current you would no longer have the energy to stare at me. Dmo Xian's eyes curved as he smiled, his low and hoarse voice was full of seductive charm. Yi Qing Luo's face turned even redder. She expressed that she really couldn't win against this deranged beast in words. Driving when she wasn't paying attention. Flirting when she wasn't paying attention. Could they still have a pleasant, normal conversation? She was so embarrassed that she flew into a rage. She lowered her head and looked at the residue on her fingers. She could still feel the man's warm touch on them. Her face turned even redder. Lowering her head, she refused to pay any attention to Dmo Xian. Looking at the person in his arms, he was extremely shy. Dmo Xian laughed as he hugged her body tightly. Out of the corner of his eye, he glanced at a certain place. That was the place where the Wind Valley sect represented. The person he was looking at was the young master of the Wind Valley sect, Gu Jingyu. The corner of his mouth curled into a cold smirk. His perceptive ability was very high. As soon as he entered the banquet, he felt a gaze staring at him from the moment he appeared. That gaze was filled with intense hostility. Following that, he looked at Gu Jingyu's gaze when he looked at Yi Qing Luo. What else did Dmo Xian not understand? Shaw wanted his woman. His little Luo would only belong to him. Let that rotten peach blossom watch him and his little Luo, being so lovey-dovey. Dmo Xian hid the chilly provocation in his eyes. When he looked at Yi Qing Luo again, it was filled with deep affection. Wind Valley Sex Representative Seat. Gu Jingyu sat stiffly on the ground. His eyes widened in disbelief. On a closer look, he could see that his body was trembling continuously. He saw the provocative gaze from the overlord. Chapter 2588. So, Dmo Xian did it on purpose to let him see the sweetness between him and Yi Luo. To make him give up completely? He had to admit it. When he saw Yi Luo nestling in Dmo Xian's arms, feeding him pastries personally and playing with him, his heart felt a sharp pain as if it was stabbed by a sharp knife, but at the same time, he was very clear that there was no possibility between him and Yi Luo. Yi Luo was only like a real woman in front of Dmo Xian. He saw Yi Luo's lips, a sincere smile. He saw Yi Luo's face, a blissful and sweet expression. He saw Yi Luo, like an ordinary young lady, snuggling in her lover's arms, shy and playful. He saw all of these, no matter how hard he tried. And absolutely could not see such an expression on Yi Luo's face. He still remembered when they were in Bu family village. Elder T misunderstood that they were a young couple. Misunderstood that they were going to St. Spring to pray for children. She had never been shy before. But in Dmo Xian's arms, she would reveal a real woman's shy expression. Gu Jingyu helplessly clenched his fists tightly. After that, he shut his eyes helplessly. Really? Give up? Give up on him till now, after so much difficulty, he finally had a change of heart? Young sect master, you. Don't tell me that towards that lady. Great Elder Gu, who was beside him, had been paying attention to Gu Jingyu's expression, and immediately his face sunk as he asked in shock. Gu Jingyu's body, which was leaning against the back of the chair, became increasingly stiff. He remained silent. But coincidentally, it also verified Great Elder Gu's guess. Great Elder Gu's face sunk as he shouted sternly, "Don't mess around. There are many women under the heavens, you absolutely cannot touch that lady." But, no matter what he said, Gu Jingyu kept his eyes closed, refusing to talk to anyone. Great Elder Gu's frown became even tighter. A pair of gloomy eyes shuttled back and forth between Yi Qing Luo and Gu Jingyu. Lil Luo, Dmo Xian didn't know how many times he had called out her name. But the young lady refused to bother about him. Looked like she was really shy. It was true that he was angry out of humiliation. He softened his tone and coaxed gently, "Lil Luo, I haven't seen you for a full 23 days. I miss you. I miss you so much that I'm going crazy. It wasn't easy to return to your side, my entire body is missing you." He was speaking words of love in a serious manner. Amidst the words of love, he did not forget to add a few words to seduce her. This man, it was really infuriating and funny. Yi Qing Luo didn't know how to ridicule him. "If you continue to ignore me, I will." Seeing that Yi Qing Luo still refused to raise her head, a trace of craftiness flashed past Dmo Xian's eyes. The body of the person in his arms stiffened slightly. It seemed to be full of rage. The moment he said something out of line, she looked like she was about to lash out at him. Dmo Xian leaned close to her ear. His low and hoarse voice was mellow like fine wine, intoxicating one's heart. "Wife. Your husband knows his mistake. F***CK. F***CK. What the F***CK, this ultimate move was too much of a cheat." Yi Qing Luo's fingers instinctively gripped Dmo Xian's collar tightly. Her cheeks turned red with a whoosh under this murmur. She raised her head and stared angrily at him. "Who's your wife? Don't mess around." The word call had yet to come out from her mouth. She went into a daze. What she met was the man's pair of shimmering peach blossom eyes, overflowing with brilliant colors, extremely resplendent. His eyes were filled with tenderness, as though he was carrying a pool of peach blossom spring water. Chapter 2589. Have you forgiven your husband? Looking at Yi-Ching Luo's flushed cheeks, her eyes filled with astonishment as she stared at his face in a daze, that adorable look. A certain man's pride had once again received a huge satisfaction. Yi-Ching Luo's charming eyes stared at him resentfully, displaying a little girl's coquettish attitude. It's not impossible to forgive you, but at the birthday banquet, stop fooling around. They were the focus of attention. Quite a number of people's gazes were placed on them. Small fights, sweet love, she didn't mind showing it to those people. But if it was too much, she didn't have the hobby of a live broadcast. How would I dare to disobey my wife's orders? Dmo Xian put on an easygoing look, his shimmering peach blossom eyes filled with warmth. Yi-Ching Luo pouted coquettishly as she stared at him, before shifting her gaze onto the birthday banquet. The moment she lifted her eyes, she met with a pair of jealous and hateful eyes. His gaze was filled with resentment. When Yi-Ching Luo's gaze met with that gaze, the owner of that pair of eyes then hurriedly averted her gaze as she lowered her head. Miao Rongrong. Yi-Ching Luo raised her brows as her lips curled into an interesting arc. She wasn't surprised that Miao Rongrong hated her out of jealousy. If it wasn't for the poison on Miao Rongrong, restraining her, probably Miao Rongrong had long been the same as Lan Ling Nua and Xiao Ling Ling, not letting go of any chance to humiliate her. Yi-Ching Luo touched her chin as she gave a meaningful smile. It could be said that the poison she planted on Miao Rongrong had saved the entire Miaogu family. Otherwise, they would have been carried out together with the Northern Wave's royal family. There would definitely be people from the Miaogu family. But apparently, Miao Rongrong didn't think so. Looking at Miao Rongrong's jealous and hateful expression, yet extremely fearful of her, not daring to show it in front of her, Yi-Ching Luo expressed that it was extremely satisfying. She liked to see the other party being annoyed by her, yet unable to get rid of her. Yi-Ching Luo's complacency naturally fell into Miao Rongrong's eyes. Little slut. Miao Rongrong gritted her teeth as she cursed in a low voice. Miao Zhengwei, who was at the side, quickly grabbed her arm. Do you want the Miaogu clan to become the current Northern Wave imperial family? Miao Rongrong was so infuriated that her face turned red, but she was afraid of Dmo Xian's presence, so she could only suppress all the words in her throat. Rongrong. Miao Yixiong, who had been silent all this while, suddenly spoke up. His gaze was sharp as he stared at Dmo Xian without blinking. Miao Rongrong pursed her lips and returned to Miao Yixiong's side, calling out in a low voice, "Father." On the surface, the father-daughter relationship between Miao Yixiong and Miao Rongrong could be described as a model father-daughter relationship. The father was kind and the daughter was filial and spoiled. However, they all knew very well what the truth was. In the end, they were just using each other. Once the other party no longer had any value to him, they would definitely not hesitate to abandon the other party and seek the greatest benefits for themselves. Do you want Dizun or not? Miao Yixiong's voice was cold, with a hint of determination. Miao Rongrong's eyes widened. Father, you mean, if you can become Dmo Xian's woman, and make Dmo Xian listen to your orders? Just a mere Yi Luo, nothing to be afraid of. Miao Yixiong's eyes were raging with a storm. His words bewitched Miao Rongrong as she was extremely tempted. I want. Miao Rongrong clenched her fists tightly as her gaze shifted onto Dmo Xian. How could she not want such a peerless man? If today, the person standing beside Dmo Xian was her, then. Chapter 2590. All right then. When the birthday banquet is over, we'll ask for the antidote as an excuse. Miao Yixiong lowered his voice, his eyes cold and sinister. Hearing Miao Yixiong's words, Miao Rongrong's eyes gradually widened as joy and excitement surfaced in her eyes. He kept nodding his head, indicating that he would follow Miao Yixiong's orders. They were all staring at him openly. How could the two of them, with their superb perception, not sense it? Yiqing Luo frowned slightly as she shot a sideways glance at Miao Rongrong. At this moment, the woman was staring at the two of them with shining eyes. What are the Miao people trying to do this time? Yiqing Luo was extremely unhappy with Miao Rongrong's gaze. Dmo Xian locked her waist as he smiled lightly. No matter, if you're unhappy, just bring her back to the West Continent by force. I have plenty of ways to make her help Long Yun Zhan suppress the parasite poison. Yiqing Luo rolled her eyes at him. Honey trap. I'll only use this trick on you. He moved closer to her lips. His low and husky voice made her weak all over. The next moment, Dmo Xian's long arm tightened and her delicate body immediately fell into his arms. His handsome face was reflected in her eyes at such a close distance. A honey trap, these three words flashed past Yiqing Luo's mind. She deeply expressed that she really could not resist Dmo Xian's honey trap. Looking at the little woman's bashful look, Dmo Xian couldn't hold back as he lowered his head and gave her a light peck on her pink lips, his fingers sinking into her fine black hair. So, Lil Luo, don't worry, I will not attract any rotten peaches, flowers. Yiqing Luo expressed. Why did she feel that this man emphasized on the three words rotten peach blossom? Was he hinting at something? The birthday banquet lasted for about 2 hours. The atmosphere in the hall finally eased up. Everyone could feel that Di Zun had placed all his attention on the girl. He didn't care about their existence at all. Everyone loosened up. Gradually, some of the more daring people began to let their own daughters go and perform. All kinds of talents, colorful and dazzling. These high-ranking officials and nobles were all thinking the same thing. Since Di Zun also needed a woman by his side. Their daughter was definitely prettier than Yi Luo. Although he was not as strong as Yi Luo. However, Di Zun was already strong enough. Even if he didn't need his own woman, he still needed to be strong enough to make people's hair stand on end. Women should be as gentle as water, and it was enough for them to accept everything about a man. After those young ladies saw Dmo Xian, their hearts had already fallen onto him. He looked at Yi Luo's face, which could barely be considered delicate and pretty. One by one, the gorgeously dressed young ladies suddenly felt their confidence rising. Yi Luo, who was not particularly good-looking, was doted on by His Majesty. If it was them, the Overlord would definitely pamper them to the heavens. As a result, there was an endless stream of shocking and dazzling talents. However, these people were destined to make the wrong calculation. Because, no matter how amazing and dazzling their talents were, from the beginning till the end, Dmo Xian had never shifted his vision away from Yiqing Luo. His gaze seemed to be glued onto Yiqing Luo. He couldn't bear to leave for even a moment. The birthday banquet had turned into a battle of beauty and beauty. Yin Xinghao, who was sitting on the main seat, looked at those young ladies, using the excuse of birthday celebration to perform all kinds of talents in an attempt to seduce the Overlord. Yiqing Luo abruptly sat up straight. She narrowed her eyes and stared at Miao Rongrong. Miao Rongrong noticed her gaze. Instead of hiding, she raised her brows in provocation and unscrupulously flashed a coquettish smile at Dmo Xian. Yiqing Luo's eyes widened, her little hands circled around the man's body and pinched his waist fiercely. Is this what you meant by not attracting rotten suitors? Dmo Xian's eyes revealed a puzzled expression, as though he didn't understand the meaning of Yiqing Luo's words. Yiqing Luo raised her head and both her hands pinched Dmo Xian's cheeks. His gaze was fixed on her from beginning to end. This knowledge made the jealousy in Yiqing Luo's heart dissipate a little. But the minute she thought of those women expressing their goodwill to Dmo Xian, she felt extremely uncomfortable. Chapter 2592. Dmo Xian's gaze lingered on Miao Rongrong for a moment. Very quickly he raised his palm and held Yi Qing Luo's little hand. Following that, his gaze fell onto Yi Qing Luo once again. Seeing Yi Qing Luo puffing her cheeks in anger, her brows were filled with an unhappy expression. His lips curled up into a devilish smile. His little Luo, was jealous. Jealousy didn't mean that he didn't trust her. It wasn't that he wasn't confident in himself. But because he cared. Because he loved her so deeply. Therefore, there was no room for even a speck of sand. Just like how he did not want to see anyone. Xiao Xiao missed Lil Luo. Just like how Lil Luo didn't want anyone to miss him. You're still laughing. Yi Qing Luo stared at him angrily as she pinched his face fiercely. Did you see a beauty throwing flirtatious glances at you and fell for her? Dmo Xian allowed her to do whatever she wanted as the smile on his face deepened. He met her resentful eyes and chuckled. No, I'm washing my eyes, he said word by word. His voice was gentle and magnetic. His burning gaze. It was as if it had turned into a soft feather, slowly drifting into her heart. In her heart, it was restless. He glanced at Miao Rongrong. He immediately looked at her. He said he was washing his eyes. She had to admit that these 3 words completely pleased her. Her mood instantly became joyful. She arched her eyebrows and snorted. That's more like it. The two of them looked at each other, smiling sweetly. Pink bubbles bubbled in their eyes. Because of Miao Yixiong's words, Miao Rongrong had already treated Dmo Xian as her own man. His actions and gaze were almost completely obvious. She was interested in Dizun. Just now, Dmo Xian looked at her. Let her heart, unable to control the crazy beating. Countless young ladies performed. The overlord didn't even bat an eyelid. And the overlord only looked at her. She knew it, with her appearance. With her position in the Miao tribe. The overlord will definitely like her. Yi Luo, that slut. How dare he seize her man? But, when he thought of the fact that his antidote was still in that slut's hands, she could only suppress the jealousy in her heart. Humph, when the overlord is completely infatuated with her and only belongs to her. Let's see how she's going to deal with that bitch. The dance ended amidst the cheers of the crowd. The surrounding Miao tribe dancers had already retreated. Miao Rongrong was still standing in the field. The breeze fluttered her red dance dress and red chiffon. Her exquisite and well-proportioned body was faintly discernible and extremely alluring. The corners of her mouth curled up into a charming smile. Her hand moved, and a white jade wine cup appeared out of nowhere. She swayed her hips and walked towards the first row of seats with graceful steps. The cheers in the surroundings gradually died down. When he realized what Miao Rongrong was going to do, they all held their breaths and watched this scene nervously. Many of the young ladies clutched their handkerchiefs nervously. They were all looking forward to Dizun's reaction. Sure enough, Miao Rongrong held the wine glass and stopped in front of Dmo Xian. She bent her knees slightly and made a gesture. Her eyes were almost greedily staring at Dmo Xian's peerless face. Her eyes were filled with infatuation. Just thinking that this man was going to belong to her. Her heart couldn't stop pounding. Chapter 2593. Silence, a deathly silence, silence for a moment. The smile on Miao Rongrong's face froze. She stared at Dmo Xian's side profile, his handsome face was flawless. She took a deep breath and took another step closer. Her body leaned against the long table in front of Dmo Xian. Miao Rongrong stretched out her hand and passed the wine glass in her hand to Dmo Xian. Rongrong is so dedicated in her dance, Overlord, can you have a drink with Rongrong? She pinched her voice as she spoke coquettishly. The jade-like fingers and the white jade wine glass matched each other. It accentuated the lady's skin even more. If it was any other man, he would probably not be able to control himself as he grabbed this jade-like hand and bit it into his mouth. This hand stretched over. Just happened to stretch out between Yiqing Luo and Dmo Xian. No matter what, Dmo Xian must have seen this hand. Yiqing Luo's slender brows rose slightly as she smiled at the hand and looked at Miao Rongrong. Between her long and narrow eyes, there was a hint of ridicule and mockery. Miao Rongrong tensed up when she was stared at by Yiqing Luo. She felt chills running down her spine as all her courage was almost crushed. However, she quickly adjusted her mentality. She was going to be the Overlord's woman soon. Very soon, the Overlord would belong to her alone. By then, she would make Yi Luo die however she wanted him to die. The viciousness in Miao Rongrong's eyes flashed past. Her red lips rose as she pretended not to see Yiqing Luo. She stared at Dmo Xian and smiled coquettishly, "Overlord. Just have a drink with Rongrong." Her coquettish voice dragged the last syllable. It could simply melt one to death. However, Dmo Xian's expression didn't change at all. Looking at the swaying arm in front of him, blocking his intimacy with Yiqing Luo. He frowned slightly. Following that, he stretched out his hand. Miao Rongrong saw him moving and her face lit up as her lips uncontrollably curled upwards. Indeed. The Overlord had special feelings for her. Seeing the Overlord's hand getting closer to her, Miao Rongrong's body relaxed and became softer. As though she could fall into Dmo Xian's arms anytime. However, Dmo Xian's hand skipped over the wine glass that Miao Rongrong handed over and grabbed the 2 bamboo chopsticks on the table. Bang! With a crisp sound, the porcelain pieces shattered. Ah! Then, there was a blood-curdling scream. Miao Rongrong felt a sharp pain in her arm. The wine cup in his hand flew out and shattered into pieces. Miao Rongrong stood rooted to the ground in a daze, one hand supporting her seemingly broken arm, as she looked at Dmo Xian in disbelief. There were 2 obvious red marks on her fair, jade-like wrist. It was the marks left by the 2 bamboo chopsticks in Dmo Xian's hands. Dmo Xian casually threw the chopsticks on the ground, as if the chopsticks were contaminated with some germs, extremely disgusted. Then, he lazily lifted his peach blossom eyes. His inky black eyes shone with a bloodthirsty light. Zun. Miao Rongrong trembled as he stared at her. Dmo Xian frowned, his thin lips moved slightly and his voice was icy cold. "Who are you? Don't disturb me while I coax my wife." The surrounding guests were extremely anxious and looking forward to hearing the Overlord's reply. Instantly, they couldn't hold it in as they burst out laughing with a pft sound. The Miao family's eldest young miss obviously stroked her hair coquettishly and threw herself into his arms. And even showed off her flirtatious attitude, as though she wanted to take down the Overlord. And even took the initiative to toast to the Overlord. She self-directed and acted out such a long show. Unexpectedly. Chapter 2594. To put it more accurately. Eldest young Miss Miao had been flirting for a while. The Overlord didn't even pay any attention. The guests present seemed to have heard the sound of slapping on Miao Rongrong's face. It was extremely ironic. Miao Rongrong's wrist was pinched by those 2 bamboo chopsticks till she couldn't move at all. Her face was pale as she saw numerous mocking eyes staring at her. She only felt resentful and humiliated. Scram. An icy cold word came out from Dmo Xian's mouth, without the slightest bit of tenderness towards the fairer sex. If it wasn't for the fact that Yiqing Luo still needed Miao Rongrong to suppress the poison for Long Yunzhan, Miao Rongrong would definitely be carried down now. Miao Rongrong's petite body trembled as she bit her lower lip tightly. She gave Yiqing Luo a resentful stare. After that, under Dmo Xian's icy cold gaze, she dejectedly held onto her broken hand and returned to the Miao Gu family's place. Miao Yixiong's face was steely green. The gaze he gave Miao Rongrong seemed as though he wanted to tear her into pieces. Miao Rongrong had always been sought after and pampered since she was young. This was the first time she was rejected by a man in public. Now she was criticized by Miao Yixiong with such a stern gaze. Miao Rongrong felt aggrieved as her eyes turned red instantly. Useless thing. Miao Yixiong frowned as he berated her coldly. Miao Rongrong stared at Miao Yixiong angrily but couldn't find any words to refute. Miao Yixiong gave a cold snort. I've painstakingly raised you to such a good look, but you can't even seduce a man and you still have the cheek to cry. Miao Rongrong lowered her head as her hands hung on her thighs as she clenched her fists tightly. Numerous gazes were still desperately looking at Miao Rongrong. Miao Yixiong felt even more embarrassed. If it wasn't for the fact that this was Yin Qinghao's birthday banquet, Miao Yixiong probably would have stood up and left. The atmosphere was extremely awkward and tense. Miao Jingwei looked at the constantly drifting gazes. And at the father and daughter pair who were sulking in silence. He was afraid that this scene would become a laughing stock for everyone. He looked at the Lord Dizun, who was whispering something to Yi Luo. He coughed softly and said in a low voice, "Clan leader, Rongrong, don't be discouraged. In my opinion, the Lord Dizun has feelings for Rongrong." Miao Rongrong's body trembled. She suddenly raised her head and stared at Miao Jingwei with reddened eyes. Miao Yixiong's gaze also shifted to him. Miao Jingwei glanced at Dizun and said, "Rongrong is courting Dizun in public. If Dizun accepts it on the spot, won't people laugh at him for being a flirtatious Dizun? He's Dizun. Even if he's a playboy, it's normal for him to have a harem of 3,000 women." Miao Yixiong did not agree with Miao Jingwei's opinion. Yi Luo's looks aren't outstanding. At most, her strength and talent are passable. However, compared to the Overlord, her talent is nothing. Why would the Overlord like such a girl with no merits? Miao Jingwei continued to analyze. Therefore, Yi Luo must have something that the Overlord needs. That's why the Overlord would pretend to dote on Yi Luo. Naturally, he wouldn't accept Rongrong's flattery in front of Yi Luo. Miao Yixiong pondered over Miao Jingwei's words. What he said was not unreasonable. Think about it. Just now, they offended the royal family of North Lan, Xia Lingling, and Lan Ling Nuo. Look at our Rongrong. Isn't it obvious that she's different? Chapter 2595. Right. That's right. If it wasn't for the fact that the Overlord had no feelings for Rongrong, he wouldn't let Rongrong off so easily. The expression on Miao Yixiong's face eased up. His lips curled into a smile as he patted Miao Rongrong's shoulder lightly. Good girl, seduce the Overlord well and leave the rest to father. I guarantee that the Overlord will listen to you only. Miao Rongrong's emotions were also stirred up by Miao Jingwei's words. She sneaked a glance at Dmo Xian's direction. That deep and handsome side profile made her heart tremble violently. She nodded vigorously. In her mind, the image of the Overlord hugging her in his arms with a doting gaze appeared. You still dare to say that you don't attract rotten peach blossoms? Yi Qing Luo snorted with a displeased look. Dmo Xian's arms circled her waist tightly. It seems that someone has attracted more rotten peach blossoms than me. It seemed that ever since he came back, he had been biting on the words, rotten peach blossoms. As though she had really hooked up with a lot of peach blossoms. She rolled her eyes and poked his face with her finger. What rotten peach blossoms do I have? I have already explained the matter regarding Yi Nianxiu very clearly. Humph, a certain arrogant man gave a light snort. Yi Qing Luo. This style, wasn't it a little strange? Overlord, are you trying to ruin your image? A certain Overlord expressed that in front of his wife, there was no need for any image. He narrowed his long and narrow peach blossom eyes and suddenly increased his strength, fiercely pushing her into his arms. Yi Qing Luo's little face crashed into his hard chest. She hadn't had the chance to express her dissatisfaction. Dmo Xian's displeased low and hoarse voice came into her ears. Are you deliberately hiding it from me, or do you really not know? Ah. Yi Qing Luo was dumbfounded. just as she was about to raise her head and ask what he meant. He suddenly lowered his head and opened his mouth to bite her neck. His teeth were a little forceful. She could feel a tingling feeling. Yi Qing Luo punched him with her fist in pain. Her gaze went past Dmo Xian's tall body and glanced at a certain figure. Her body suddenly stiffened. "You're jealous of that young sect master Gu?" Yi Qing Luo recalled Dmo Xian's awkward look as she coughed lightly and asked. The teeth that were biting her neck loosened slightly. Immediately after, another round of forceful chewing. Although it was a bite, it was not really a bite. Yi Qing Luo could clearly feel the touch of his tongue as it swept past her skin. Her body trembled slightly. She clutched the clothes on the man's back with both hands. This was his tacit agreement. Not far behind Dmo Xian was probably the 10th row. Gu Jingyu's eyes were glued to them without blinking. From afar, Yi Qing Luo could see Gu Jingyu's eyes, which were filled with sorrow, unwillingness and pain. As though he was unable to accept the sweet love between her and Dmo Xian. "Ah Xian, I didn't hide it, I just forgot," she immediately explained. However, the man who was hugging her tightened his grip on her delicate body and increased the strength of his teeth. Yi Qing Luo groaned in pain. She struggled, "That. Ah Xian, I really forgot, stop fooling around." Although Miao Rongrong shared most of the attention. But there were still quite a number of people who were looking at them. He bit her like this. Wouldn't it damage his prestige as an overlord? Dmo Xian refused to let go. Yi Qing Luo's struggling temper came. Her little hands pinched hard on his firm waist. The hard muscles felt great. She didn't have the mood to feel it as she gritted her teeth and shouted angrily, "I didn't even treat him as a rotten peach blossom. I totally didn't treat him as anything. Why are you still tangling with him for?" The man who was hugging her finally loosened his strength. His mouth also moved away from her neck. Yi Qing Luo continued to pinch his muscles and refused to let go. "Did you bring the vinegar jar with you? If I really brought it with me, he wouldn't be sitting there alive." Dmo Xian gave a cold harumph, totally not intending to conceal his jealousy. He was Dmo Xian's woman. Dared to peep. If it wasn't for the fact that he didn't want to disturb Yin Qinghao's birthday banquet. Chapter 2596. Listening to her own man, her mouth was filled with jealousy. Yi Qing Luo hooked one arm around his neck, while the other hand was pinching the muscles on his waist. Immediately, facing Gu Jingyu's gaze, she took the initiative to bend her head and kissed Dmo Xian's lips. A kiss, a light touch. She shifted her body, her little hand slid up along his waist, grabbing his black hair which was hanging on his shoulder. Her fingers hooked lightly, twining his black hair around her fingertips, and tugged slightly. "Are you satisfied now?" She looked at Gu Jingyu, and then kissed Dmo Xian. Which was to show Gu Jingyu her relationship with Dmo Xian. This action, indeed, pleased Dmo Xian. His brows rose slightly, the long and narrow arc, demonic and seductive. Mo Yao's peach blossom eyes were dyed with bewitching rays, as he gave a low laugh, satisfied. Yi Qing Luo rolled her eyes, and loosened the mischievous hand on his waist. This man's body seemed to be made of stone. Her fingers were hurting from the pinching. But the man didn't make a sound. She threw herself into Dmo Xian's arms, and looked at the performance area in front. Because of Miao Rongrong. Everyone also knew about the overlord's love and pampering towards Yi Luo. All of them also dispelled the idea of seducing the overlord. They obediently watched Yin Yinxiu's birthday performance for Yin Qinghao. 10th row seats. Gu Jingyu sat stiffly on his seat. The wine glass in his hand rolled onto the ground. He stared blankly in front, at the direction of Yi Luo and the overlord. His heart was torn in bursts. He closed his eyes in pain. In his mind, Yi Luo's gaze replaying the scene. As if telling him, "Look, this is my fiancé. The scene where she took the initiative to kiss the overlord. She intentionally kissed him for him to see. She intentionally wanted him to give up. He admitted, Yi Luo had done it. His heart was already like dead ashes. The birthday banquet continued for another 2 hours. It was nearing the end. Yin Xinghao passionately invited Dmo Xian, ghost martial artist, and the rest of the Heavenly Academy to stay at Qingyue clan. In another month, it would be the selection for the Holy Maiden of the Miao tribe. There were also many people who were extremely interested in the Miao tribe. They wanted to take the opportunity to watch the Holy Maiden selection in a month's time. Old Man Gue Yu let Yan Shao Yi and the rest attend Yin Xinghao's birthday banquet as representatives. At the same time, they could go to the Miao tribe to gain some experience. Dmo Xian and Yiqing Luo naturally had no objections. Thus, the group stayed in the Great Pleasure sect and arranged for guest rooms. Just as Yiqing Luo and the rest followed housekeeper Yin towards the guest room area, Miao Yixiong led Miao Rongrong forward with a big smile on his face. Faction leader Yin, it's rare for us to leave the Miao tribe, and we're planning to have fun in Qingyue City for a few days. Can you give us 2 rooms? Yin Xinghao's smiling face froze. The surrounding guests who were leaving also looked at the Miao people with disdain. Who didn't know that the Miao tribe had a motive for staying in the Qingyue sect? Obviously, the overlord's attitude towards Miao Rongrong did not dissuade the Miao people. In the eyes of the guests, Miao Yixiong and Miao Rongrong were like a joke. However, Miao Yixiong and Miao Rongrong totally disregarded the surrounding people who were pointing at them, as they looked at Yin Xinghao with smiles on their faces. Yin Xinghao awkwardly looked towards the direction of Dmo Xian and the rest. Those who come are guests. Faction leader Yin, since the Miao tribe leader wants to stay in the Qingyue sect, then let them stay. Yiqing Luo chuckled as she shot a glance at Miao Yixiong. Star. Chapter 2597. This, Yin Xinghao looked at Miao Yixiong, who was smiling sincerely, and still felt that something was wrong. Anyone could tell that Miao Yixiong had brought Miao Rongrong to the Qingyue sect because of the Dizun. Let them stay. Wouldn't that give them a chance to harass Dizun? It was not easy for him to convince Dizun, Gue Wu, and the others to stay in the Qingyue clan. If Miao Yixiong angered Dizun, wouldn't that be venting their anger on him? No matter, even if eldest young Miss Miao wants to seduce my Xian, she doesn't have the capital, so I don't think much of her. Yiqing Luo said with a smile. Miao Rongrong, who was at the side, heard it very clearly. She was so angry that she almost wanted to retort. Before she could speak, Miao Yixiong grabbed her tightly. Miao Rongrong suppressed her anger, her eyes filled with coldness. Did he have the capital? Yi Luo, that little slut, doesn't have the final say. She was waiting for the overlord to listen only to her. When he only doted on her, she wanted Yi Luo to have a taste of what it felt like to be in pain. Yin Xinghao found it hard to refuse. After all, the Miaogu aristocrat clan's patriarch had personally spoken. He had been afraid of the Dizun and had not dared to agree to it easily. He was also worried that it would affect him. But Yiqing Luo had an indifferent attitude. He nodded his head and ordered his men to bring the few Miao people to the guest room. But he specially instructed them to separate the courtyards of the Miao people and Yiqing Luo and the others to the furthest. Yiqing Luo and the rest were arranged to stay in a courtyard, separated into several small rooms. Although it was called a small room, it was actually not that small. Moreover, the interior design was extremely elegant. It could be seen that this courtyard was usually used to receive important guests. Originally, Yiqing Luo and Dmo Xian were in 2 separate rooms. But under Dmo Xian's silent gaze, Steward Yin was so frightened that he swallowed back the words he wanted to say to separate them. After that, he arranged for the 2 of them to stay in the most spacious and most elegant, husband and wife guest room. Yiqing Luo expressed, her reputation, her clean reputation, really no longer existed. Fortunately, the people from the Qin Yu sect did not look at them as if they were unmarried and living with a man. It wasn't that he didn't dare. Instead, everyone felt that it was very normal. Because of the way Di Zun doted on Yi Luo. She wanted nothing more than to stick to Yi Luo. They should be in the same room. At least Yi Luo was here. There was still someone who could soothe Di Zun. The most important thing was, the overlord had already called Yi Luo's name in front of everyone at the banquet. Mother, son. Perhaps, Yi Luo had already married His Majesty. Yi Luo might even be the mistress of the imperial palace. Hence, when Yi Qing Luo saw this couple's room, some extremely ambiguous, seductive props. He was completely dumbfounded. Weren't these ancient people a little too open-minded? What kind of person did they treat Dmo Xian as? They couldn't handle such a hardcore thing. What's the matter? Dmo Xian asked softly as he saw Yi Qing Luo standing motionlessly beside a wooden cabinet. His voice caused the little woman's body to suddenly jump. She quickly turned around and opened her arms. Her cheeks were so red that they seemed to be dripping water. No, nothing. What's behind? Dmo Xian narrowed his peach blossom eyes. No, nothing at all. Yi Qing Luo coughed violently as her hands hurriedly closed the cabinet. Let's go rest, go rest. Dmo Xian was pushed into the inner room by Yi Qing Luo. His upper body's weight was almost all on Yi Qing Luo's hands. Chapter 2598. Yi Qing Luo avoided his gaze and pursed her lips. I'm not nervous. Huh. This sound came from the man's nose. It was extremely sexy and flirtatious. Yi Qing Luo's hands trembled slightly and almost couldn't control herself. And it was this tremble that gave the man an opportunity. Dmo Xian's large palm suddenly clasped her wrist. Immediately after, her body was like a feather, flying in a circle and trapped in Dmo Xian's arms. She widened her eyes and wanted to struggle. The man's arms seemed to know her movements. He had trapped her in his arms early on. Let me see, what are you trying to hide from me? Dmo Xian carried her and walked towards the wooden cabinet. Yi Qing Luo's feet stepped on the ground, gathering all her strength and refused to move. How could her strength match Dmo Xian? No matter how she tried to stop him. Dmo Xian could easily hold her as they got closer to the wooden cabinet. The closer they got, Yi Qing Luo's cheeks were dyed red and the panic in her eyes was even more obvious. The two of them stood in front of the wooden cabinet. He raised his hand and placed it on the cabinet door. The young lady stretched out her hand in panic and grabbed his arm. Xian, let's not be curious. I'm very interested in things that can make you so flustered. Dmo Xian's husky voice whispered in her ear. The deep meaning in his eyes seemed to be mixed with some kind of emotion. His broad palm fiercely hugged her slender waist, pressing her petite body tightly against his. Yi Qing Luo's face blushed all the way to her ears. Creak. The cabinet door was opened. It revealed a dazzling array of things inside. What were iron chains, soft whips, silk cloth to cover one's eyes, or bracelets and ankles, as well as a variety of things that made one blush. Dmo Xian's hand slightly stiffened. Yi Qing Luo was so embarrassed that she directly stuffed her head into Dmo Xian's arms. She expressed that in the modern era, she had seen more, various kinds of things than these. At that time, her heart was without a ripple. But now, seeing these inferior things, her face was flushed and her heart was racing, unable to control it. Because the person standing beside her was Dmo Xian. You don't want me to see these? Dmo Xian's deep eyes drooped down as he gazed at the young lady in his arms who was so shy that she didn't even want to raise her head. Yi Qing Luo's petite body trembled as she buried her head in his arms. One could see that her fair neck had been tainted with a faint shade of pink. Dmo Xian gave a low chuckle as his fingers tightened around her waist bit by bit. Being shy means that you know what these things are used for. The man's boiling hot body transmitted a scorching heat through his clothes. Yiqing Luo's heart was thumping as it kept trembling. The strength of the man's arms tightened. She could almost feel something pressing against her body. She who had been intimate with Dmo Xian before, how could she not understand the change in Dmo Xian at this moment? It could be said that during the birthday party, Dmo Xian was flirting with her as he responded. Tell me, how do you know? Dmo Xian lowered his head, his scorching breath teasing her skin. Yiqing Luo trembled even more fiercely. I just know. The young lady's sweet voice, at this moment, had an obvious coquettish tone. It seemed to be able to hook one's soul, emitting a suffocating charm. I know, why don't we try it one by one? Dmo Xian gave a low chuckle as he stretched out his other hand. 5 fingers moved gently on her face. Chapter 2599. The young lady's exquisite face was reflected in the man's burning pupils. The moment this familiar face appeared, Lin Fan's eyes widened. Dmo Xian's body suddenly tensed up. Both hands suddenly clasped her shoulders. Immediately, she was carried up by the waist. Yiqing Luo was shocked and felt the man's stronger reaction. Her hands immediately hooked onto Dmo Xian's neck. At the same time, Dmo Xian's kiss landed accurately on her pink lips. This kiss was different from the previous simple touch. It was also different from the previous gentleness. But it was a kind of overbearing kiss, as if he wanted to swallow her into his stomach. Yiqing Luo's mind instantly went blank. Her whole body, almost hanging on Dmo Xian's body weakly. Until her back sank into the soft mattress. She then woke up from her dream. Her little hand pushed his chest weakly. Beast, you. Ugh. Before she could finish her protest, she was sealed once again. Yiqing Luo couldn't breathe. In the panic, she met Dmo Xian's fiery eyes. His hoarse voice rang beside her ear. Lil Luo, I miss you. All the time, I miss you. Miss her, almost to the point of going crazy. His voice, his words, his gaze, made Yiqing Luo throw away her armor. Towards his deep feelings. She could never resist. In the end, she was eaten up cleanly, not a single residue was left. In the room, the temperature was high. Faintly mixed with the young lady's panicked protest, Dmo Xian. Let me say this first, the things in the cupboard, we will absolutely not play with The group of people, in the Joy sect, had spent 3 days. The few Miao people who had been silent for the past few days finally couldn't hold back and started to take action. This day, the group of people set up a few tables outside the courtyard. Yiqing Luo nestled in Dmo Xian's arms, discussing with Yan Shao Yi and the rest about the Heavenly Academy. When Peach heard that, she directly said that she wanted to apply to enter the devil class. Goe Wu, who was sitting at another table, remained silent. No one knew what he was thinking about. Zhou Mo was hugging Kitty Li, whispering something to her from time to time, which was rather sweet. The atmosphere was just right. But for some reason, Miao Yi and Xian Gui were sitting in a corner with their heads bowed, looking absent-minded. Especially Miao Yi. Since the end of the birthday banquet, he had not been able to lift his spirits. Even if Yiqing Luo took the initiative to talk to her, she didn't get much of a reaction. However, Yiqing Luo could roughly guess the reason. Thus, they didn't force Miao Yi to integrate into their atmosphere as soon as possible. While they were chatting, a deep laughter suddenly came from outside the courtyard. Ha ha ha. Looks like this courtyard is the liveliest. I should have come earlier to join in the fun. Miao Yixiong, who was dressed in the Miao tribe's attire, walked in with a big smile on his face. Miao Rongrong, who had obviously dressed up meticulously, followed behind him. In the corner, Miao Yi's body froze. Xian Gui immediately stood up and stood in front of Miao Yi. Miao Yi got up, grabbed Xian Gui's arm, and quickly rushed into the room. Yi Qing Luo's peripheral vision caught a glimpse of their departing figures as her eyes flashed past an extremely shallow and profound meaning. But she still put her attention on Miao Yixiong and Miao Rongrong, who were obviously here to find trouble. Overlord, Master Gui Wu, young Master Mo, Miao Yixiong walked in and greeted the three of them respectfully with a familiar look. Dmo Xian's head was still bowed, his large palm on Yi Qing Luo's hair gently. Gui Wu was still in a deep state, maintaining his silence, not even lifting his eyelids. Zhou Mo was still hugging Kitty Li, lowered his head and secretly kissed Kitty Li's face. His eyes were filled with smiles, feeling very satisfied. Chapter 2600. But what kind of person was Miao Yixiong? He had already made up his mind to shamelessly send his daughter to Dmo Xian's side. This bit of awkwardness was nothing to him. Very quickly, Miao Yixiong continued with a smile. Rongrong had borrowed Qinua's sex kitchen to make some snacks and specially sent it over for you to have a taste. Saying that, he took a look behind him. Miao Rongrong was carrying a bamboo basket which was covered with a silk cloth. Swaying her waist, she leisurely walked towards the table where Yi Qing Luo and the rest were at. She placed the bamboo basket on the table. When the silk cloth was opened, it was filled with various exquisite fragrant pastries. One look and one smell and it was extremely appetizing. Miao Rongrong was standing beside Dmo Xian. Yi Qing Luo could clearly smell the fragrance from Miao Rongrong. It was extremely rich and made one's nose turn red. Overlord, have a taste. These are all made by me personally. A coquettish voice came out from Miao Rongrong's mouth. From the bamboo basket, she took out a piece of brightly colored pastry that looked very delicious. She delicately handed it over. These are the special pastries of our Miao tribe. Other than the Miao tribe, no one else knows how to make them. As she said that, Miao Rongrong sent the pastries towards Dmo Xian's mouth. Yan Xiao Yi and the rest widened their eyes as they stared straight at the coquettish Miao Yi. Their hearts were filled with curses. This Miao Rongrong's brain was not working well, right? A few days ago at the birthday banquet, the overlord had already rejected her. Didn't she understand the situation? Now, she actually went to seduce the overlord in front of Yi Qing Luo. Didn't they see Yi Qing Luo nestled in the overlord's arms? These Miao tribe people, were they tired of living and wanted to die early? Just as Miao Rongrong's hand which was holding the pastries was about to reach Dmo Xian's mouth, a "pa" sound was heard. Miao Rongrong's hand was hit by a burst of energy. She cried out in pain as the pastries in her hand fell onto the ground. She held on to her hand and staggered a few steps back. Dmo Xian slowly raised his head. His obsidian peach blossom eyes had a deep luster, as if it was a whirlpool of terror. Miao Rongrong's hand, which had been hit, was in so much pain that she felt wronged. After meeting Dmo Xian's gaze, all the grievances had vanished into thin air. Her heart was beating faster and faster. His eyes were filled with excitement. The overlord was looking at her. The overlord was indeed interested in her. Miao Rongrong was nervous and expectant. Her eyes were filled with emotion as she transmitted her love through her gaze. Following that, they saw Dmo Xian's thin lips moving, only to hear the icy cold words spitting out from his thin lips. Scram. Clean and efficient, without any hesitation. Miao Rongrong's expression froze. Yan Xiao Yi and the rest burst into laughter. He did not give Miao Rongrong any face at all. I say, young Miss Miao, why do you have to make yourself look like a clown and specially come here to perform for us? Yan Xiao Yi laughed and fell into Qiao Jin's arms. Of all people, Miao Rongrong had fallen for Di Zun. In the eyes of the overlord, there were only 3 types of women. A kind of people who were related to Qing Luo. A kind of people who had nothing to do with Qing Luo. A kind of people who had enmity with Qing Luo. Other than Qing Luo, Any other woman in front of the overlord would be one of the three types. Coincidentally, Miao Rongrong was the third type. However, Miao Rongrong was not aware of it. She just had to court death. The overlord was indeed too awesome. Chapter 2601. Eldest young Miss Miao's broken hand at the birthday banquet has yet to recover, and now she can't wait to extend her hand to be beaten. Yi Qing Luo's clear voice had a hint of teasing. Could it be? Eldest young Miss Miao has fallen in love with the pleasure of having her wrist broken? Yan Xiao Yi and the rest laughed even louder when they heard that. Miao Rongrong only felt humiliated as her entire face flushed red. She looked at Yi Qing Luo with a gaze filled with deep hatred. But when she turned towards Dmo Xian. But it turned into love and grievance. Yi Qing Luo naturally saw Miao Rongrong's gaze. She couldn't help but chuckle as her brows revealed a smile, yet not a smile of ridicule. Yi Qing Luo expressed that she really didn't understand Miao Rongrong as a person. It had already come to this stage. Miao Rongrong still had the confidence to seduce Dmo Xian again and again. Although Yi Qing Luo was very assured towards her own man. But there was such an irritating housefly that kept scuttling around her. And even came to harass her from time to time. It was quite annoying. The few of them giggled as they didn't leave any face for the Miao people. Miao Yixiong's expression turned darker. Miao Rongrong's hands clenched into fists as anger surfaced on her face. But very quickly, she kept all her emotions. She took a deep breath and changed the expression on her face into a pitiful grievance look. Following that, she held onto her injured hand as she cried pitifully, "Overlord, Rongrong only wanted to let you have a taste of the pastries that Rongrong made personally. These pastries are all made by Rongrong with all my heart. And contain Rongrong's sincerity." Miao Yixiong immediately continued, "That's right, before the sky had even turned bright, Rongrong had already woken up to make pastries for the overlord. From the ingredients to the handwork, to the lighting of the fire. Rongrong did all these personally. These are all Rongrong's sincerity towards the overlord." Pfft. Another burst of laughter came from Yi Qing Luo's mouth. She lifted her eyelids lazily as she sneered, "Earlier, didn't Miao Yixiong say that these pastries are for us to have a taste? How did it become specially made for Xian?" Miao Yixiong's face darkened, then he hurriedly explained, It's specially for everyone to try." "That's good." Yi Qing Luo sat up straight in Dmo Xian's arms. Nodding her head in satisfaction, she adjusted the expression on her face to look extremely arrogant and spoiled. "I'm very jealous. I can't bear to see other women pestering my Xian." As she said that, she casually rolled up her fine black hair and leaned into Dmo Xian's embrace. "I'm a very cruel person to those little bitches who pester my Xian. Miss Miao is such a beautiful young lady, don't take things too hard." Miao Rongrong's body trembled. Thinking of Yi Luo's strength, as well as the goo poison that Yi Luo had placed in his body, Yi Luo's heart sank. His face gradually turned pale. Miao Yixiong forced a smile and tried to ease the atmosphere. Of course, we all know that His Majesty dotes on Miss Yi." As he spoke. At the same time, he emphasized the word unique pet. Chapter 2602. Following that, she didn't wait for Yi Qing Luo to speak as she hurriedly cut in, "Overlord's status is noble and powerful. He's the hero in the hearts of all the ladies in Nirvana realm. I'm afraid there's no one who doesn't admire Overlord." As she said that, she used her pitiful eyes, which were filled with tears, to look at Dmo Xian affectionately. "I admire Overlord, but I've never thought that I can be like Miss Yi, standing beside Overlord. I know I'm not worthy." She lowered her head, as though she was trying to suppress her emotions. Yi Qing Luo only felt it was funny when she heard that. Was this insinuating that she wasn't worthy of Dmo Xian? She only wanted to give Miao Rongrong 2 words, her. Rongrong. Miao Yixiong suddenly shouted. He looked at Dmo Xian in a fluster and immediately knelt down. Overlord, please forgive me, Rongrong didn't mean that. She absolutely didn't feel that Miss Yi isn't worthy to stand beside Overlord. She just admires Overlord too much. The crowd watching the show. Yiqing Luo. Even if this sentence really didn't have that meaning being emphasized by Miao Yixiong, it was filled with that meaning. In the end, he was trying to insinuate that she, Yi Luo, wasn't worthy to be in love with Dmo Xian. She wasn't worthy. Was Miao Rongrong worthy? This pair of father and daughter really had a wild imagination. Yiqing Luo knew that the reason why the Miao father and daughter stayed in Joy's sect was to let Miao Rongrong seduce Dmo Xian. She just wanted to see what tricks they were playing. So she didn't mind them staying in Joy's sect. After all, Miao Rongrong's poison needed her antidote very much. If she could make use of this opportunity to control Miao Rongrong completely and make Miao Rongrong follow her back to West Continent to settle Long Yunzhan's matter, that would be the best. But she didn't expect this pair of Miao father and daughter to be so stupid. After spending 3 days, they came up with this kind of method to disgust her? Trying to brainwash her and tell her that she wasn't worthy of Dmo Xian? At this moment, Miao Rongrong suddenly realized that she had said something wrong and lowered her head timidly. Sorry Miss Yi, I didn't mean it in this way, I was just answering your question. Yiqing Luo laughed softly. It's alright, I am different from you. You ordinary people are indeed not worthy of my Xian. Miao Rongrong was so angry that she clenched her fists tightly. Her face was distorted and she was about to explode. Miao Yixiong's face darkened as well. It was hard to believe that Yi Luo would be so thick-skinned. Di Zun did not speak. They could only kneel on the ground, motionless. Miao Yixiong had been the leader of the Miao tribe for many years and was considered to have a high position of power. He had not knelt for many years. After kneeling for a while, he felt his legs go numb. Seeing that Di Zun had no intention of talking to them, Di Zun smiled. Miao Yixiong gritted his teeth. Di Zun, Rongrong really didn't mean it that way. Please forgive Rongrong for the sake of Rongrong's admiration for you. Apparently, he had directly ignored Yiqing Luo's shameless words. Miao Rongrong also cooperated and blinked her watery eyes, which were filled with love. The clamor made Dmo Xian frown. Because Yiqing Luo wanted to tease the Miao father and daughter duo, and also because Miao Rongrong still had some use. He didn't stop her and allowed Yiqing Luo to have fun. But these people's words made him extremely unhappy. Moreover, the clamor made him lose his patience. Chapter 2603. This gaze made Miao Rongrong's heart tremble fiercely. Her body couldn't stop trembling, filled with fear. Dmo Xian's lips curled up slightly as he spat out the icy cold words mercilessly. Who do you think you are? Your admiration will only make me feel disgusted. Miao Rongrong's eyes widened in disbelief. Immediately, Dmo Xian hugged Yiqing Luo's slender waist tightly, as he declared to take her into his arms. Word by word, he enunciated clearly, worthy or not, I have the final say. Speaking of which, I still feel that I am not worthy of Lil Luo, As he said that, his long arm lifted the person in his arms. Slender fingers gently caressed her pink lips, his eyes were filled with gentleness. Lil Luo, being with me, it's been hard on you. An obvious difference in attitude. Even the way he addressed himself had an obvious change. This also showed Dmo Xian's obvious attitude. Looking at her own man, lowering his own status to stand up for her. Yiqing Luo naturally would not let down her man's good intentions. Her lips curled up slightly as she stretched out her arms and circled around his neck, smiling as she said, Who asked you to be the man I love? This little grievance is nothing. Critical hit. 10,000 points of damage critical hit. Plus a ton of dog food. Yan Xiaoyi and the rest expressed that the sweet pink bubbles were almost blinding their dog eyes. Miao Rongrong and Miao Yixiong felt as though they had eaten a fly. Kneeling on the ground, they didn't know whether to leave or not. Still not going to scram? Want me to personally make you scram? Dmo Xian said coldly. Miao Yixiong and Miao Rongrong didn't dare to stay any longer as they swiftly stood up and left the courtyard. Afraid that Dmo Xian would be unhappy, turning them into the same ending as the North Wave's royal family. Looking at the two of them leaving in a hurry, Yiqing Luo laughed and fell into Dmo Xian's arms. Just this guts, and still thinking of seducing you, becoming a person above others, aren't they too ambitious? Dmo Xian gazed deeply at the person in his arms as his large palm gently covered her head, rubbing her fine black hair. Yiqing Luo blinked her eyes as she asked curiously, but? Ah Xian, they've prepared for so long, surely it's not possible for them to give up so easily, right? Yiqing Luo somehow felt that Miao Yixiong would not dismiss this idea so easily. No matter, I will protect you. Dmo Xian did not put the Miao father and daughter in his eyes. In his eyes, those two people were at most props which Yiqing Luo could make use of. I know you will protect me, but I always feel that it's better to be careful. Yiqing Luo looked towards the direction of the Miao father and daughter pair. A pair of charming eyes flashed with a deep dark light. Indeed, it was as what Yiqing Luo had guessed. Sending pastries, thinking that Yiqing Luo was not worthy to stand beside Dmo Xian and so on. It was just a foreshadowing for their follow-up. On the second day, housekeeper Yin came to Yiqing Luo's courtyard with a hesitant look. Yiqing Luo roughly guessed that it was related to the Miao father and daughter duo as she directly opened her mouth. What do they want to do again? Steward Yin was also very annoyed with the father and daughter. But he was only a steward of Qin Yu sect. He hesitated for a moment as he stuttered. Miao clan leader asked me to pass a message, hoping to have a private talk with Miss Yi. Private? She alone? Yiqing Luo narrowed her eyes slightly. Where? Chapter 2604. There was definitely a trap. But Yiqing Luo was very curious. Miao Yixiong's target was Dmo Xian. Why would he ask her to meet him privately? Moreover, it just so happened that Dmo Xian was not in the courtyard. It was obvious that Miao Yixiong had been paying attention to her courtyard at all times. Dmo Xian left. Thus, he asked butler Yin to come. It seemed that he had made up his mind to meet her alone. Miss Yi, I'll go and reject them for you. Housekeeper Yin saw Yiqing Luo remaining silent and immediately spoke out the words which he had been considering for a long time. To Yi Luo and her friends. Not to mention her close relationship with Gue Wu and Dizun. It was because of their personalities and the way they conducted themselves that everyone in the Qinhua sect liked from the bottom of their hearts. Especially, Butler Yin knew that his young sect master really wanted to befriend Yi Luo and the others. At this moment, he naturally didn't wish for Yiqing Luo to be schemed against by those few Miao tribe people. Yiqing Luo's eyes narrowed slightly as she pondered over Miao Yixiong's intentions. If he wanted to talk to her in private, Miao Yixiong could have taken the initiative to look for her. But now, he had specially sent Butler Yin to deliver a message. If he wanted to attack her or do something to her, wouldn't it be an excuse to let Butler Yin come over with great fanfare? Therefore, could it be that Miao Yixiong really wanted to talk to her in private? Or, it was about the antidote. He asked Housekeeper Yin to pass the message because he wanted Housekeeper Yin as a witness to prove that he had no intention of doing anything to her. He was deep in thought. Suddenly, an extremely scorching heat surged in her chest. It was constantly eroding her heart. It was the profound heart jade. The profound heart jade was reacting strangely. Yiqing Luo's pupils contracted slightly. Her gaze followed the direction of the profound heart jade and looked towards the direction where that indescribable feeling came from. Over there. What's there? It seemed to be calling out to her, Miss Yi. Housekeeper Ian looked at Yi Ching Luo's face, which had suddenly turned pale and instantly panicked. Miss Yi, are you all right? Do you need me to call the doctor? Yi Ching Luo slowly shook her head as she tried her best to maintain the calmness of her breathing. Her gaze looked towards that direction as she asked hoarsely, over there, what is that place? The back garden, Butler Ian answered. Back garden? The place where Miao Yixiong arranged to meet her. What did Miao Yixiong do? Why did she feel like she was being called? Lass, it's the black tortoise. The aura of the black tortoise. In his mind, old man Song, who had been silent for a long time, suddenly spoke. Yi Ching Luo was slightly stunned. Black tortoise? A portion of the black tortoise's soul is nourished within your profound jade heart. This portion of the soul sensed the black tortoise's aura, which is why the profound jade heart reacted strangely. Old man Sung explained. In other words, the other part of black tortoise's soul was currently in the direction of the back garden. As long as he could retrieve that part of the black tortoise's soul, he could completely awaken the black tortoise. Yi Ching Luo's eyes flashed slightly as her lips curled into a smile as she looked at Steward Ian. Since Miao clan leader has invited me with great hospitality, I naturally have to make a trip over. Will Steward Ian please lead the way? Miss Yi. Butler Ian still wanted to persuade her. It's fine. After being lazy for so many days, it's time to have some fun. Yi Ching Luo's lips curled into a teasing cold arc. Her charming eyes were filled with a chilly intent that made one shudder. Butler Yin's body couldn't help but tremble as he immediately quivered. Yes, I'll bring you over now. Based on Yi Luo's ability. Indeed, there was no need to fear Miao Yixiong. Chapter 2605. At the back garden. Yi Ching Luo followed housekeeper Ian and had just reached the back garden when she saw Miao Yixiong and Miao Rongrong sitting in the pavilion. It was rare that Miao Rongrong didn't wear her Miao tribe's unique attire, but wore a dark-colored long dress. Her face was pale and gentle. A head of fine black hair was tied up in an extremely simple bun, with quite a lot of fine black hair hanging over her shoulders. She looked extremely delicate and pitiful. The minute she saw Yi Ching Luo approaching, Miao Rongrong was the first to stand up, and like a gust of wind, she dashed towards Yi Ching Luo as her eyes reddened and she knelt down in front of her tearfully. Miss Yi. I know, I was wrong yesterday. I shouldn't have admired the Overlord and shouldn't have any improper thoughts towards the Overlord. Please forgive me. Yi Ching Luo. Who could tell her what kind of situation was this? Kneeling down at the slightest disagreement. Complaining tearfully at the slightest disagreement. A drama queen coming online? Miss Yi, yesterday's matter is our fault for not considering thoroughly. I hope you don't mind. Miao Yixiong also walked over, apologizing sincerely. Miao Rongrong raised her head in an extremely strong manner, as her eyes sparkled with tears as she looked at Yi Ching Luo timidly, displaying the essence of the white lotus to the extreme. If Miss Yi is not willing to forgive me, then I will kneel here forever. Looking at the father and daughter pair, echoing each other, Yi Ching Luo couldn't help but laughed. She squinted her eyes as she looked at the person kneeling by her feet with a smile which didn't look like a smile. She really admired Miao Rongrong. According to her understanding, Miao Rongrong is the eldest young miss of the Miao tribe, and the future sacred maiden. She had always been arrogant and her heart was higher than the sky. It was impossible for her to be the weak white lotus. She had not expected. After meeting Dmo Xian, this arrogant and conceited eldest young Miss Miao could actually portray the white lotus so vividly. She was rather persistent. Miao Rongrong was so persistent. If she didn't give her some face, wouldn't it be inexcusable? Hence, Yi Ching Luo's lips curled into a smile. After that, under Miao Rongrong's strong and stubborn gaze, she walked past Miao Rongrong and walked towards the pavilion. Then, he heard her lazy voice. Okay, then you can kneel. Forgive? Ha, ha. She knew that Miao Yixiong had asked housekeeper Ian to invite her to the back garden for another purpose. It turned out that they wanted to use this trick to force her to say that she forgave them. The Miao tribe's holy maiden selection was imminent. Many people from other forces had also decided to stay in the Qinyu sect. In this back garden, there would be people from other factions passing by or strolling in groups. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, Miao Rongrong knelt before Yi Luo and begged for his forgiveness. If it had been someone else, they would definitely have forgiven Miao Rongrong because they didn't want others to misunderstand that they were a vicious and unforgiving person. But Yi Qing Luo wasn't someone who could be easily manipulated. If Miao Rongrong liked to kneel, then so be it. Apparently, Miao family's father and daughter had not expected Yi Qing Luo to say such things. Miao Yixiong coughed lightly and hurriedly spoke out loudly, "Miss Yi, Rongrong already knows her mistake and has promised you that she will no longer admire the overlord and will no longer have any contact with him. She has already done so much, don't tell me you're still not willing to forgive Rongrong?" Coincidentally, opposite the garden, there were quite a number of representatives from various powerhouses who were walking together and happened to hear Miao Yixiong's voice. All of them were stunned speechless. Chapter 2606. What kind of unspeakable relationship did the young mistress of the Miao tribe have with the overlord that Yi Luo caught? So, Miss Miao came to apologize to Yi Luo and beg for his forgiveness? This isn't right. During the birthday banquet, young Mistress Miao had personally performed a dance and taken the initiative to approach Di Zun. However, she had been treated so coldly by Di Zun. How could he have a private relationship with young Miss Miao? So, what was going on with this scene? The 5 or 6 representatives of the various forces immediately became interested. They were definitely not gossiping. Because this was gossip about the overlord. It was extremely important. He wanted to figure out the relationship between the overlord and Miss Miao. Only then did they know how to face the Miaogu family. That was what Miao Yixiong had in mind. No matter what the overlord's attitude towards Miao Rongrong was. Anyway, it was enough to portray Miao Rongrong and Di Zun as having an affair, an ambiguous relationship. After that, when Rongrong and Di Zun appeared in front of everyone, it would not be so abrupt. Miao Yixiong hid the glint in his eyes and looked at Miao Rongrong, who was kneeling on the ground with an aggrieved expression. He coughed gently and a helpless look appeared on his face. He then turned to Steward Ian and said, "Sorry to trouble you with today's matter, Steward Ian. Both of us would like to plead with Miss Yi in private." "Steward Ian, if you have other matters to attend to, please go ahead." It was obvious that the guest was being asked to leave, so Butler Ian couldn't stay any longer. Looking at the surroundings of the garden, there were about a dozen people coming and going. Under the watchful eyes of the public, the father and daughter of the Miao family could not do anything out of line. Moreover, Miss Yi was not someone who would be bullied easily. With that thought in mind, Butler Ian retreated. In the pavilion, as well as the small path leading to the pavilion, there was only Yi Qing Luo and the Miao father and daughter trio left. "Miss Yi, other than begging for your forgiveness, I also want to talk to you about the antidote." At this moment, Miao Yixiong put away the guilt and helplessness from before and lowered his voice as he spoke in a deep voice. Yi Qing Luo raised her brows. "You want the antidote and this is your attitude?" She glanced at Miao Rongrong, who was still kneeling on the path, and snorted. His smile was filled with mockery. Miao Rongrong was so infuriated that her face flushed red, almost unable to suppress the arrogance in her heart as she stood up to tear Yi Qing Luo apart. However, from the corner of her eyes, she glanced at the few people who were still watching from the opposite side of the pavilion and her eyes were filled with a layer of mist. "Miss Yi, during the birthday banquet, we've already tried our best to hide the fact that you've been poisoned. Please give me the antidote." The antidote which Miao Rongrong had taken from Yi Qing Luo's hands had long been consumed. And every time the poison flared up, she was in excruciating pain. She really didn't want to suffer this kind of pain again. "Conceal?" Yi Qing Luo couldn't help but laugh. "Do I need you to conceal? Besides, do you really want to hide it from me?" Miao Rongrong's eyes were filled with tears as she suddenly kowtowed to her. Miss Yi, I really want to help you hide it. If you bear the name of a spy from another country, you will become a wanted criminal in the Nirvana realm. The pavilion and the strolling path on the opposite side were separated by a not-so-wide pond. The people from the other forces couldn't hear their conversation clearly. However, they could clearly see Miao Rongrong kowtowing to Yi Luo with a pitiful look. Chapter 2607. No matter what, everyone loved to sympathize with the weak. Especially when they saw Yi Luo's arrogance. Miao Rongrong's pitiful look. The scales in their hearts naturally leaned towards Miao Rongrong's side. As men, they felt that it was normal for a man to have 3 wives and 4 concubines. Especially for an outstanding man like the Overlord. Even if he had a harem of 3,000 concubines, that was also a normal move. Even if Miao Rongrong really had an affair with the Overlord. Yi Luo this was at most the Overlord's mistress. She had no right to accuse Miao Rongrong and stop Miao Rongrong from interacting with the Overlord. But although they were thinking this way in their hearts, but they had no intention of interfering. After all, for now, the Overlord still pampered Yi Luo. They didn't need to offend the Overlord just because of a Miao Rongrong. Feeling the continuous gazes from the opposite side of the pavilion, Yi Luo's lips curled into an extremely faint cold arc. She naturally knew. What was Miao Rongrong up to? The more ostentatious she was, the more pitiful Miao Rongrong was. But, so what? So what if those people felt that Miao Rongrong was pitiful? Could they even come out to save the damsel in distress? She had said it before, she liked the look of others who were unhappy with her but didn't dare to do anything to her. Miss Yi, I'm serious. As long as you give me the antidote, I guarantee. I will definitely prove for you that you are not a spy from another country. Miao Rongrong saw Yi Luo's teasing smile and not saying a word, and immediately became anxious. Looking at Miao Rongrong's anxious look and the jealousy in her eyes, Yi Luo couldn't help but curled her pink lips as she laughed softly. Eldest Miss Miao, brains are a good thing, too bad you don't have it. Her devilish arrogance was reflected in Miao Rongrong's pupils. Miao Rongrong had some jealousy which couldn't be concealed, but more of it was fear and uneasiness towards Yi Luo. Yi Luo slowly stood up. Her fiery dress was pouring down. It was just a delicate face, but at this moment, it was sparkling with dazzling radiance. Miao Rongrong's pupils contracted uncontrollably. In her eyes, there was a shock that even she herself did not realize. Yi Luo casually shot a glance at her as she laughed softly. Eldest young Miss Miao, just based on my relationship with Ah Xian, who would think that I'm a spy from another country? If I wanted to destroy the Miaogu clan and destroy the Northern Tide continent, why would I need to torment myself like this? Why would I be a spy? Miao Rongrong's face instantly turned pale. She quickly stood up and stumbled backwards, hitting the railing of the pavilion. Miao Rongrong, who on earth gave you the confidence to think that? At the same time that you want to seduce my man, I will still give you the antidote. Yi Luo's lips curled into a sneer, her eyes filled with contempt. Miao Rongrong tightly pursed her pale lips, her delicate body leaning against the railing, shivering. Looking at Yi Luo's arrogant ridicule. Miao Rongrong clenched her fists and looked down. Her messy black hair concealed the expression on her face. It also covered her facial features and gradually distorted them. Since that slut Yi Luo refused a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit, then there was no need for her to be soft-hearted. Originally, she intended to give Yi Luo this chance. As long as Yi Luo was willing to give her the antidote, she would only treat Yi Luo gently by a little. Now, she would make Yi Luo kneel on the ground in a sorry state. Not only would she make Yi Luo obediently hand over the antidote, she would also destroy Yi Luo completely. Chapter 2608. She squinted her eyes, and even through Miao Rongrong's messy hair, she could tell that Miao Rongrong's eyes were filled with killing intent. She couldn't take it anymore. She wanted to stick her face forward and let her hit her. After hitting her, she felt that her pride had been trampled. Then why did she need to offer herself up for her to hit? Yi Qing Luo sneered, "Since eldest Miss Miao doesn't intend to continue kneeling, I shall not accompany you." She came to the rear garden not only to watch the drama queen's performance. She had to search for the other part of Black Tortoise's soul. Where was it in the rear garden? Yi Luo. Miao Rongrong saw that she was about to leave and immediately raised her head in a flustered manner, calling out her name. After calling out, she realized that it was inappropriate and lowered her head, calling out timidly, "Miss Yi. Don't go. If you want me to kneel, I will kneel." Saying that, she was about to continue kneeling. Miao Yixiong pulled Miao Rongrong from behind as his expression sunk. "Miss Yi, although you and the Overlord are in front, but you're not married to the Overlord, so why must you be so overbearing?" He seemed to be suppressing his anger as he dragged Miao Rongrong away. "Rongrong admires the Overlord. That's a matter between Rongrong and the Overlord. Since you're not married to the Overlord, then you have no right to stop the Overlord from interacting with other women. This kind of jealous woman is not fit to be the mistress of the Imperial Palace. Rongrong, let's go." Miao Yixiong roared with righteous indignation. However, Yi Qing Luo's gaze went past Miao Yixiong and looked at the opposite side of the pond, at a flash of a figure. She frowned slightly. Why did she seem to see Miao Yi and Xian Gui? What were the two of them doing sneaking around? She wanted to take a closer look. But she could no longer see the two figures. Yi Qing Luo's slender brows knitted even tighter. She was about to push Miao Yixiong away and rush to the opposite side to chase after Miao Yi and Xian Gui. But her arm was suddenly grabbed by someone. She heard Miao Rongrong crying. Yi Qing Luo looked over impatiently. Miao Rongrong cried, "Father. I won't go. I won't go." Following that, he tried his best to struggle away from Miao Yixiong's arm. His two hands clutched onto Yi Qing Luo's wrist tightly. "Miss Yi. Please forgive me. Forgive me. Let go." Yi Qing Luo spat out the words coldly. Her icy cold gaze swept past the hand that was wrapped around her arm. But this time, Miao Rongrong did not look afraid. Her eyes were still brimming with tears, and she was crying so hard that she could not catch her breath. However, the words that came out of her mouth were filled with arrogance and a cold smile. "Yi Luo, you will pay for your foolishness." Her words had just ended when she suddenly grabbed Yi Qing Luo's wrist tightly as she screamed out, "Ah!" Then, he leaned against the railing of the pavilion. She kept screaming, "Miss Yi. Don't kill me. I don't dare to admire the Overlord anymore. I don't dare to," amidst the screams and cries. Her body rolled over at the railing. His entire body flipped into the pool. From the opposite angle, they could only see Yi Qing Luo pushing Miao Rongrong into the water. "Ah, help. Help." Miao Rongrong flopped a few times in the water and then sank into the water. Eldest young Miss Miao. The few people from the various powerhouses on the opposite side saw that a life was about to be lost, so they couldn't continue to watch the show. They all jumped into the pool and saved Miao Rongrong up to the shore. Miao Yixiong was so angry that his face was steely green, as he shouted angrily at Yi Qing Luo, "Vicious woman. If anything happens to Rongrong, even if I have to risk the entire Miao Gu family, I will take revenge for Rongrong." Chapter 2609. This turn of events made the people from the major forces who were watching the show feel ashamed. "Miss Yi, you really have no tolerance for others. Young Lady Miao has specially come to apologize to you. Even if you don't accept or forgive her, you can't do anything to her. Lady Miao is one of the candidates to be chosen as the sacred maiden of the Miao tribe. Aren't you disrespecting the century-old Miao tribe by killing her? Miss Yi, although it's wrong for eldest Lady Miao to admire the Overlord, but if the overlord and eldest Lady Meow are in love, treating eldest Lady Meow in this way is a disgrace to a woman's character. Countless comments were on Miao Rongrong's side. From Miao Yixiong and Miao Rongrong's occasionally loud conversation, they could roughly guess. It was highly possible that Miao Rongrong had an affair with the overlord and was caught by Yi Luo. Yi Luo dared not blame Di Zun, so he attacked Miao Rongrong. After all, Yi Luo's appearance couldn't compare to Miao Rongrong's at all. No wonder the overlord accepted Miao Rongrong's admiration. How could an old love compare to a new one? This group of opportunistic forces immediately prepared to protect the overlord's new sweetheart and stand up for her. He listened to the clamor of the crowd. Yiqing Luo's slender brows creased slightly as her gaze swept across everything on the opposite side to ascertain that Miao Yi and Xian Gui were no longer around. Only then did he turn his eyes back to the Miao family's father and daughter. Looking at the expressions of their drama queens, Yiqing Luo's lips suddenly curled into a contemptuous sneer. Miao Rongrong was actually playing such a cheap trick in front of her. Miao Rongrong wanted to lead everyone to believe that she, Miao Rongrong, and Dmo Xian had an intimate relationship. Then she would lead everyone to believe that she, Yi Luo, was a woman who was easily jealous, and was not fit to stand beside Dmo Xian. Unfortunately, Miao Rongrong's wishful thinking was wrong. Her soul did not grow up in this era. He didn't think it was normal to have multiple wives. Jealousy? She, Yiqing Luo, was easily jealous. The devilish smile on Yiqing Luo's lips grew brighter and brighter. Her eyes, which were as bright as stars, revealed a devilish smile as she looked at the people who were criticizing her, as well as the Miao family's father and daughter, who were glaring at her with hatred. Word by word, she said decisively, "Shut your dog mouths." These cold words seemed to be mixed with ice, causing those people to instinctively close their mouths. When they came to their senses, their faces immediately turned ashen. They were actually intimidated by a yellow-haired little girl. Miao Rongrong, who was lying in Miao Yixiong's arms and dripping wet, immediately cried a few times. Her frail body trembled uncontrollably and it was hard to tell whether it was the water or tears on her face. "Miss Yi, why did you push me into the water? I just want to ask for your forgiveness. Why do you have to do this to me? I'm happy, I'm willing." Yiqing Luo laughed mischievously. "Even if I kill you, what can you do?" She didn't bother to deny it. Under Miao Rongrong's pitiful disguise, her denial was merely a denial. No one would believe her. You're actually so vicious." Miao Rongrong was extremely satisfied with Yiqing Luo's reply. In her eyes, she almost couldn't suppress the joy. Especially when her gaze saw that figure who was flying over swiftly behind Yiqing Luo. Chapter 26:10. Dmo Xian. Yiqing Luo was slightly stunned. She remembered that early this morning, Tang Beiyuan anxiously asked him to leave, saying that there was an urgent matter which required him to settle personally. Dmo Xian then left. Why was he back so soon? Was he done with his business? Yiqing Luo's stunned expression, in Miao Rongrong's eyes, became panic. Under Miao Rongrong's wet eyelashes, her eyes sparkled with a sinister sneer. As long as the overlord knew that the woman whom he fancied was using his power to be arrogant and despotic, and had a vicious heart, the overlord would definitely see the good in her. Hence, Miao Rongrong put in even more effort to perform overlord. Rongrong only wanted to apologize to Miss Yi for sending the pastries yesterday, but she was choking with sobs as she complained. But she saw a tall figure dressed in a flowing purple robe, as though he had gathered all the light, walking quickly towards them. The next moment, Yiqing Luo felt a warmth on her back. The familiar sandalwood scent seeped into her nose. The man's arm had already encircled her slender waist. Yiqing Luo very naturally placed her hand on the back of the man's hand, slightly glancing sideways, her eyes filled with gentleness. "Have you settled the matter?" Dmo Xian whispered softly beside her ear. The two of them naturally hugged each other, with a look of deep affection. This made those who were originally helping Miao Rongrong to accuse Yi Qing Luo shut their mouths. At this moment, Miao Rongrong's sobs were all stuck in her throat, not knowing whether to continue crying or not. Could it be that she was crying so pitifully that Di Zun didn't even notice her existence? This point, the crowd also realized. They looked at the drenched Miao Rongrong wrapped in Miao Yixiong's brocade robe, and their gazes changed. Didn't this pair of father and daughter say Miao Rongrong and the overlord had an affair? No matter how they looked at it, the overlord didn't seem to put Miao Rongrong in his eyes at all. Miao Yixiong's face was steely green, staring at Dmo Xian and Yi Qing Luo's gentle talk. He secretly gritted his teeth and raised his voice, "Overlord. Even though Lady Yi is your woman, her heart is so vicious and jealous. She's not fit to stand by your side." Miao Yixiong's voice made Dmo Xian have a slight reaction. He lifted his eyelids and glanced at Miao Yixiong with his deep peach blossom eyes. This gaze sent a chill down Miao Yixiong's spine. But when he thought of his plan, he held Miao Rongrong tightly in his arms, so tightly that Miao Rongrong burst into tears. "Miss Yi dared to kill me in front of so many people and pushed me into the water. In private, doesn't she want to kill all the women who tried to get close to His Majesty?" Miao Rongrong burst into tears. Miao Yixiong looked distressed and his face was filled with anger. "Sir Overlord, the Miao tribe must demand an explanation from Lady Yi." This commotion naturally attracted many guests from the Qin Yu sect. In total, there were at least 30 people. Housekeeper Yin was originally worried that the Miao father and daughter pair would do something to Yi Qing Luo, so he had been paying attention to this side. When the matter was blown up, he immediately sent someone out to inform Yin Qinghao and Yin Yanxiu who were outside. Whereas at the pavilion, Dmo Xian listened to Miao Yixiong's indignant words. He held Yi Qing Luo's waist and slowly walked towards the pavilion's railing. The place where they were standing was a level higher than the opposite. Chapter 26:11. The nobleman's lips were obviously hooked into a smile, but no one could feel the slightest bit of warmth under his gaze. Everyone felt as if they were in an ice cellar. It was so cold that they couldn't move. Those who came to watch the show wanted to escape. But they discovered that because of their nervousness, their bodies were stiff and unable to move. Moreover, the moment they moved, in this eerie and silent atmosphere, would definitely be the center of attention. Hence, everyone stood stiffly on the spot, watching Dmo Xian's expression carefully. Even the sound of their breathing subconsciously became extremely light. Under this strange atmosphere, Dmo Xian slightly narrowed his peach blossom eyes, reflecting an extremely cold ray of light. His thin lips moved slightly as he spat out each word coldly. "Explanation? I wonder what explanation Leader Miao wants." Under this majestic aura, Miao Yixiong was so frightened that he couldn't utter a word for a long time. His entire face was almost pale. The gaze he used to look at Dmo Xian was also filled with fear. Dmo Xian's smile deepened, the coldness in his eyes deepened. "Since Leader Miao hasn't thought of what explanation you want, then this lord will decide for you." Soon after, his voice that was filled with a demonic charm resounded in everyone's ears. "Why don't we destroy the Miao Gu family? Is this explanation satisfactory to Leader Miao?" Obviously, he was just using the most ordinary tone to say it. But everyone felt a chill from the bottom of their hearts to the top of their heads. Everyone couldn't help but shiver a little. One after another, they shrank their necks. Especially those few forces who previously stood by the Miao father and daughter's side. It was as if they were fleeing, distancing themselves from the Miao father and daughter, for fear of being involved with them. Destroy the Miao Gu family. The Miao Gu family, which had almost 1,000 years of history. When Di Zun said that he wanted to destroy them, his tone was so light and casual. But they absolutely believed it. As long as the overlord wanted it. Not to mention the Miaogu family. Even the North Wave continent would not be a problem. This Miaogu family's leader was actually so foolish to want the overlord to give an explanation. Now, not to mention an explanation. Whether his Miaogu clan could survive or not was now a problem. Miao Ishiong's cold sweat instantly soaked through his clothes. His hand, which was holding Miao Rongrong, trembled for a moment. Di Zun, this is not a joke. Di Zun really wanted to destroy the Miaogu family. That bitch. What kind of drug did the overlord eat to make the overlord fall head over heels for her? Miao Ishiong tried his best to restrain the fear in his heart. With a pale face, he said in a trembling voice, Your Majesty, it was Miss Yi who pushed Rongrong. Aren't you afraid that the world will laugh at you for protecting her like this, Your Majesty, for becoming a fatuous ruler because of a woman? His words made Dmo Xian raise his brows slightly. His long and narrow peach blossom eyes met Miao Ishiong's face with a faint smile. The smile at the corner of his mouth was very cold. My woman, I love to spoil her uncontrollably. F***ck. Another critical dog food. The atmosphere was still so strange and horrifying. However, the onlookers did not know why, after the overlord said this, their hearts were boiling. These tons of dog food had made them deeply aware of what was going on, Yi Luo's position in the overlord's heart. No one could replace him. You're tuning into the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.